Hey, we're trying out a new setup today. We are testing 512 Audio's new Limelight XLR microphone. And because of this setup, we can actually relax a bit and sit back. If you haven't heard of 512 Audio, they're a relatively new brand. They're actually a subsidiary or another company under the brand of Warm Audio, which is actually very well known for very affordable and high quality microphones. And similar to that, and as we'll see in this review, 512 Audio is basically trying to do the same thing. This is about 379 grams. It's about 6.59 inches by 2.3 inches, and its capsule size is 28 millimeters. And so whether you're starting or you're trying to upgrade your setup for podcasting, streaming, or any other high quality audio voiceover work, this could be a good choice for you. We'll discuss the pros and cons. And in this new studio podcast setup that I've created here, I'll try to simulate a couple scenarios so you can kind of understand and get a better idea for how this performs for your situation too. No post edits are made. I'm just giving you the raw audio straight from the clips that I'm recording right now. And of course, this is on XLR microphone. We've got our XLR cable running into our Scarlett Focusrite, which is going into my iPad Pro over here. A relatively simple setup. I'll tell you, like, as someone who hasn't really worked with XLR microphones before, it's not too daunting to get into, and there are a couple advantages to going the XLR route, especially if you want the best audio quality. Usually that then requires you getting a audio interface because you have a lot of additional tweaks and settings that you can get out of them. On the Focusrite here, we do have our gain set relatively high. It's about 9 o'clock, so you do definitely have to crank it up quite a bit. Again, they recommend keeping the microphone about 6 to 8 inches away from your mouth. And I'm talking at a normal volume here. If I get a little bit closer, you get more of that ASMR sound, which is a feature that these dynamic hypercardioid microphones can do for you, the proximity effect. And while I wouldn't necessarily consider myself an audio expert, I have used a variety of microphones in the past for various projects, and so I'll be able to give you a comparison between some other contenders that you might use for similar podcasting setups on a tighter budget. Right now you're hearing the Rode Wireless Go 2, which isn't necessarily an apples to apples comparison to here, but a lot of people are using it for podcasting too. A closer contender, which we'll actually switch to later on, is the Rode NT USB microphone, which we actually have right here. While this isn't an XLR microphone, a lot of people actually use this in a podcasting setup because you can actually remove this insert here, if we can get it, and you can actually see the threading, which allows you to attach it to a similar boom arm like we've got set up. This is 512's BBA boom arm, which is available on their site. Been using it throughout these tests, and it helps you get very good and precise placements. With a setup like this, you are going to need a decent boom arm. There are cheaper ones available on Amazon, which go for like $10, $15. Typically with those, anything probably heavier than a phone, it's going to cause it to sag over time. So it makes it very hard to lock in your position of your microphone. So I've liked this boom arm in the time that I've used it. I think it goes for about maybe $70 or $80, which is in line with other ones that are basically just like this. If I'm not mistaken, I actually have the same exact one, which I actually didn't buy for a microphone. I actually bought it to hold my DSLR camera. And actually right now, I've switched over to it holding a Sokani X60, which is a 60 watt LED video light. It's about 7 pounds, and obviously this microphone comes nothing close to that. This isn't even a pound. This is only about 380 grams, so it can definitely hold this microphone very well in place for a long time. And again, I highly recommend investing in a high quality boom arm so you don't run into any frustrations down the road. Now, as I'm touching the microphone here, and as I'll be discussing throughout, you'll notice that it is quite sensitive to holding and touching and adjusting. So I'll just discuss that and get that out of the way right now. Some competing microphones tend to be a little bit less sensitive on the side when you're touching them. And when you're making adjustments like this, these taps, as you can hear, are creating that low rumble and are being picked up pretty prominently on the microphone. So that's probably one of the biggest downsides. I would suggest when you are recording your audio, get the microphone in place in the zone that you want so you don't have to touch or make any adjustments along the way. They recommend on their page and their manual for this to talk about 6 to 8 inches away from it for the most ideal performance of this. So let's get a couple specs out of the way. And one of the things that you're noticing right now, if you're not talking directly into it, it's not picking up the sound on its sides and behind as much, which is one of the advantages to this kind of microphone. So the first thing is its polar pattern. This is a hypercardioid, so it focuses on audio that's coming directly or facing directly towards it. And so that can really help in environments where you have a lot of external noises, like I do here in my studio. One of the major things that I run into, and I'm sure a lot of other people can run into as well, is actually your other gear that you're recording with. So we've got a really bright light over here, and for the most part it's quiet, but when its fans kick in, it can be picked up pretty noticeably. One of the other things I want to point out in this review, and as I'm comparing it to other microphones here, is how much of the background noise are you picking up? And tied in with that, one of the other reasons we're able to get this really nice clean audio, especially as we get a little closer here and you're really picking up the details of my voice really well, is because this is a dynamic microphone, so it really excels at audio sources that are very close to it. As far as other specs go, the frequency of this is between 50 and 150 megahertz, which is a frequency custom tuned for voice and speech. There is also a built-in pop shield in the microphone here, so that should help negate some of our, as I call them, spitty words, is when we say certain words like P's, B's, or harsher words, there's puffs of air, and there's actually a test that you can do that actually helps you minimize the effect of that on microphones. Wherever you don't feel that as much, that's usually a good location for you to put your microphone, because it's not going to pick those up as much. In my experience, it does do a good job compared to microphones that don't have built-in pop filters. That said, if you really want to get the most out of it, I would definitely suggest actually using an additional pop shield for this. And just for an example, I actually have one on hand, just a cheap third-party one that I've had for a while. This doesn't completely eliminate it, but pop bill potatoes, it definitely softens it a lot more than pop bill potatoes. So this is like a cheap thing that you can pick up for maybe around $10, and it actually attaches to your boom pole or mic stand relatively easily. And I'm intentionally not going to cut that part out, just again so you can notice how much of your taps and stuff this microphone picks up, even though I'm down here and gently touching it. So again, if you really want the best quality audio, even though this has its built-in pop shield, you're still going to want to use an additional pop shield again. As I'm listening through the audio right now, actually compared to when I take off the headphones, my room isn't necessarily poorly sound treated. Like, I've got carpeted floors, I have a lot of furniture and stuff to lessen or dampen the amount of echo bouncing off the walls. That said, I mean, when I take off my headphones, it definitely doesn't sound like a nicely sound treated room for sure. This, however, is just a huge difference. Like, this is actually enjoyable to listen to, rather than when I take this off and I hear what my voice sounds like. And so again, that's one of the main advantages with a microphone like this. It's not magic, but what it's doing, because of its design, the way it's focusing in on the audio directly in front of it, not picking up as much of the audio surrounding it, it's doing a great job. This is a great way to up your audio quality very easily just with one microphone. The last important setting is that you have the high pass filter. There's just a switch at the bottom here. It's a little bit difficult to access. And with that, that kind of brings up a couple cons that I'll quickly mention. One, I can't easily access that low cut filter right now. I'm gonna need like a pen cap or something. I think I can get it with this curtain rod holder. The answer is yes. So this is the low cut filter on. There's definitely less of that low rumble. So if you've got a very deep voice or other deep audio sources and you're trying to like minimize that a little bit without doing anything in post, this is actually doing a really good job. It also seems to, maybe ever so slightly, it helps reduce those taps, so it's not as much of a big boomy sound that you're picking up, but my voice definitely doesn't feel as rich or deep. So if you are going for that sound profile, if you want that tone, don't turn on the low cut filter. You may not like that, even though they call the other low cut filter, the default setting, flat, and then this the low cut. If I was to equate this to recording video, it's like recording in a flat picture profile, and I can add whatever EQ profile I want to get more of a sound that I want. But I'm gonna go ahead and switch the low cut filter back to flat, so turning the low cut filter off. It might not seem too dramatic, but again, I think my voice has a lot more character. It definitely sounds a lot deeper here, a lot more full. So those other cons that I wanted to mention. So first, yes, it's hard to do that switching of the low cut filter on and off. Not that you would necessarily be doing that on the fly, so it's not too big of an issue, but something to keep in mind. One of the reasons that makes it a little bit difficult is it's 360 swivel mount. So one of the other accessories that's included with your kit, and in addition to your carrying pouch. Now, and I apologize as this is going to sound not very nice, it is very difficult to move your microphone once it's in the swivel mount, and I'm not going to try to adjust it anymore, but essentially if you want to make any adjustments, whether turning it, taking it on and off, it is a very tight fit. And tied in with that, and this is more on the boom pole itself, you can see here just the way this attachment to your 360 swivel mount works is it's tight at this point here, and I can turn it that way. So if I want to keep it tight and make any adjustments, I have to do a full 360 swivel, which isn't always ideal. Anytime I go like this though, and move away from my face, it loosens it, so it can't stay tight. This, it'll stay tight, you know? But anytime I want to come back to this point, I have to do a full turn essentially. So that's not the most ideal. Minor things so far, but something to keep in mind with this setup. But because this is a smaller attachment, a smaller threading on the actual boom arm itself, you actually need to switch to a larger threading adapter in order to convert it to or make it compatible with our mic attachments. So obviously one of the differences with this microphone compared to the Limelight, and one of the, again, benefits of having a dynamic hypercardioid microphone, it doesn't pick up as much of the audio coming around it. And so one of the points that I want to demonstrate with this is that it's definitely picking up more of the sound of my light fans compared to the Limelight. It actually, although it also has a built-in pop filter, it does pick up a lot of those puzz. Maybe not as prominently, I think. Although this doesn't have a low-cut filter, it doesn't pick up the taps as much, and it doesn't have as much of a boominess to it when it's picking it up. So it's doing a better job in that sense. But we can put our pop shield, our pop filter, in front of it. Here we go. Popping potatoes, por favor. Popping potatoes, por favor. The audio definitely sounds good. I don't think it has as much of that broadcaster, that low, deep, nice sound that you get with the Limelight. And as we get a little bit closer here, it also, I don't think, has as much of that proximity effect too. It just sounds like I'm getting a little bit louder, but it doesn't have as much of that ASMR sound to it. So that helps you understand the difference in sound signature, tone, whatever you want to call it, compared to the two. But one of the other conveniences with this setup, I would say, as an advantage compared to the Limelight, is the fact that, one, it doesn't need phantom power, so it just needs a USB cable to power it, which is great. But the other benefit, of course, is that I can actually monitor directly out of it with zero latency. Obviously, if we're talking about conveniences, this isn't a very convenient thing to set up, whether you're just trying to quickly switch locations, you're trying to take this on the go, you need the boom arm, you need the microphone, the pop filter, you need the Focusrite or whatever other audio interface you need. In addition to that, you need something to actually record the audio with. This, on the other hand, the audio quality is not nearly going to be as good or rich sounding or maybe studio or broadcast like, but it's one little device that I can just put onto my collar, on a table, attached to any other attachment really easily, and I'm good to go. So that helps you understand the differences between two very different audio setups, but obviously they're getting the same job done, just with different quality and conveniences. In terms of appearance, as you can see, this has a very retro look to it. I think this helps it stand out from more modern looking microphones, or maybe even the more typical microphones, which even have unique designs like the Blue Yeti. Everyone's got one of those. They're very easy to identify. There's nothing very cool or unique to them anymore, in my opinion. It's just, oh, they've got the Blue Yeti. Of course, everyone does. Even to the designed in Austin, Texas on the side, looks pretty nice. That's not to say that the Rode NT USB doesn't look cool. I like the sleek all black design. It feels very good in the hand. It's a very good build quality too. But in terms of the looks between them, this kind of looks a little bit more generic, whereas this has a little bit more character to it. I'm not entirely sure what the side fins are doing, like if there's actually any benefit to them on the side, like if that's helping with the audio quality at all, or if that's more of just a design choice, you know, kind of like how some cars have air intakes which are just fake and plastic. They're there and it does help with the look, so it does at least have that going for it. In terms of build quality, it's not necessarily the heaviest microphone, which might indicate, you know, something being built very well, but with it in hand, it feels all metal. I've actually dropped it a couple times, hasn't had any noticeable scuffs or dents in it, so it's taken a bit of a beating pretty well, so I'd imagine that it would last a good amount of time too. Provided you put it in its pouch when you're transporting it, I think it'll last a very long time. And so again, for about $200, this is a really nice sounding microphone. Provided you either have or are ready to switch to an XLR setup, this will get you great sounding audio for, you know, streaming, podcasting, any kind of voiceover work. It sounds really good. It does have a few quirks, but maybe at this lower price point, that's something you're either willing to deal with, or like I said, provided you don't touch your boom arm as much, it's not that big of a deal. This is some of the best audio that I have been able to record on my own, that's for sure. Thanks again for watching this video. This has been Paul from Make Use Of, and I'll catch you in the next one.